Hey everyone, my name is Christian Wegman. I am one of the team leads for the Spring 2022 to Summer 2022 Computer Science Capstone, and I'm joined today by my team Akasha, Al, Gary, Mike, and Long. Today we're going to be going over the WonderTix project, which was sponsored by Portland Playhouse. WonderTix is a combination of a CRM, which is a customer relationship management software, and a ticketing system. The main goal of it is to be a replacement for their existing system that is currently hosted by Salesforce, and it's been an ongoing project and has had multiple teams prior to us working on it. Now I will show the current state of the WonderTix project. So as you can see, we have a completely redesigned UI here. We have the logo on the top left, as well as the events, seasonal tickets, and a donate button. In the events page, we can click see showings. It'll give us a brief description. We could select a date and a time and a quantity for tickets, and then we could hit get tickets. We could go to the cart and the tickets will show up there, and we're able to check out. So I could add a donation there, and once I fill in this information and hit next, it will take me to a Stripe checkout page, but for time's sake I will not be showing that in this demo. So now we'll go back to the events page. We have cards down here for subscriptions, but those aren't currently implemented, so I won't be showing those at the moment. And this is the admin page. So the admin page has a variety of different features: accounts, contacts, reporting, and create tasks. For now, I will show reporting and how that works. So we could hit accounts and hit run, and it'll give a list of accounts. These accounts are accounts you could search for or see in the accounts tab, but this way we have a way to generate more specific reports about the types of accounts. I could do contacts. Again, all of these contacts are contacts you could search for in the contacts tab, but this way it allows us to generate a report that has a little bit more precise information. So if we wanted to see all of the users that used the email address that's at Tutanota, we can run a query on that, and we only get users that use that specific email address. And then we could do the same for donations. So we have a list of the donations, and yeah, we could generate all of those reports from there. So that's all I'm going to show for the CRM side. And next we'll look at a couple features in managed ticketing. So here we have a few more features. We have door list, manage events, add new event, and delete showings. I will be showing door list and manage events in this demo. So we could click door list, select a date, and it will show up with a list of people that are scheduled to show up at the event. From here we could check off if they've arrived, or if they haven't actually arrived and we checked the wrong one, we could uncheck those as well. And that's kind of it for door list. We could go back to the dashboard and go to manage events, and we see a list of events. We're able to go in, edit them. I could delete events and save. And you can see the events deleted successfully because now we only have one event or one showing within the test event. And then we also have this nice showings page. So this will show a list of cards that have a brief description as well as the name. We could click on it, and it has additional information about the showings. So that's going to be it for the video demo. Now we'll talk about some of the work that we did on WonderTix. When we came into this project, we had 5 main goals for what we were going to do going forward. Our first goal was to merge the CRM and the ticketing backend and front end. Our next goal was to adjust the front end to be unified, modern, and mobile friendly. And then we also wanted to modify the existing project to be more readable and maintainable, in addition to updating the existing packages. And then we also wanted to implement guidelines and processes for future teams to build off of. And beyond that, our last goal was to separate components into more modular pieces. First, I'm going to have Mike come in and talk about the work that we did merging the CRM and the ticketing backend together.
So, as Christian mentioned, we noticed that the CRM and ticketing has been built in different repositories. And at the beginning of the project, we identified that it's really hard to boot up the development mode and proceed with development and feature development. Therefore, we decided to connect ticketing and CRM repositories together under one repository structure. We refactored CRM and rewrote CRM using TypeScript to align with ticketing portion of the software. After that, we have had multiple days of trying to figure out how to build the development process better. So Christian decided to Dockerize the components of the software and gave us an ability to have one Docker container that is responsible for booting up the system. So it works on any machine now. On the side of the refactoring, we noticed one of the primary issues is server. During our first initial look, we identified that server was implemented in one file and it was hard to navigate. Therefore, we decided to restructure and decouple routes of the server and move them to separate appropriate folders. By doing so, we made it easier to navigate and made future developments for the specific sections. And also, we decoupled the interfaces away from the server components and added them as separate files, so it's easier to utilize them as need be. On the restructuring of interface systems, we also identified that we had multiple instances of interfaces implemented in different implementation files. So our decision was to move them out from implementation files into a separate folder, which would contain all of the interfaces, and developers can navigate them and use them in appropriate implementation files rather than restating them.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And next, I'm going to have Al talking about portions of the front end redesign.
The accomplishments here are we built an implemented front end for the ticketing system using React.js, TypeScript, and Tailwind CSS, which includes ticketing main page and ticketing manager. Ticketing main page includes event cards, seasonal tickets, cart page, checkout page, donation page, etc. And ticketing manager includes adding a new event page, manage events, door list, delete event, and whatsoever. Number two, we built and implemented the new front end of WonderTix CRM using React.js, TypeScript, and Tailwind CSS, which includes CRM dashboard. And it includes account manager, contacts, reporting, create task, edit task. The front-end redesign process includes implementation of front-end prototype, which has adding new components based on the sponsor's requirement. And then we removed unnecessary components from the previous WonderTix version. After that, we replaced old front-end libraries with Tailwind, both in CRM and ticketing, and then connected the prototype to the backend. After that, we tested the front-end functionality through user and admin interface. And at the end, we maintained the front-end and fixed any issue may occur through the testing process. And finally, front-end redesign functionality. The new front-end design provides new features to WonderTix in both CRM and ticketing. It's based on simplicity and professionalism. It provides both the user and admin the best experience and more accessibility to WonderTix features. It supports both PC size and mobile size screens. Navigation bar provides accessible tabs to multiple pages. And finally, CRM dashboard and ticketing manager dashboard provide easy access to manage events and users' accounts. And then we have an example of ticketing main page interface in both laptop and phone screen sizes. And then ticketing manager interface. And at the end, WonderTix CRM interface. Thank you so much.
And next, Long will join us and talk about some of the work we did simplifying packages and modernizing the data that we were collecting, and implementing Stripe.
So for package simplifying and modernizing, we've cleaned up a lot of the packages and converted the front end to TypeScript so that we could assign types to our objects and components. We've replaced a lot of the old material UI code that was giving us conflicts when we were compiling our files together. So for both ticketing and CRM, when we run npm install, there are no more conflicts, so we don't have to force it. New website front end is using Tailwind CSS for both ticketing and CRM, which is an industry standard, which should make it easier for people to get into the project. And a lot of the front end components ended up being rewritten to get rid of the errors that we were seeing before. For the Stripe implementation, we implemented Stripe for payment processing when we buy tickets. So if you buy a ticket, you just put it in the cart, hit checkout, and it processes the Stripe payment correctly. We discussed a lot and ended up with Stripe as one of the better services for nonprofits due to the discounts that we get for processing fees.
Okay, and next I will have Gary talk about our authorization implementation.
Hi, I'm Gary. I'd like to talk a little bit about OAuth. OAuth is a protocol for generating, validating, and redacting authorization tokens. These authorization tokens are used throughout the website to give users things like administration rights, which can be assigned through the Auth0 portal, which is the OAuth provider that we've chosen to use with this project. The authorization is only required in areas of the website that would need to have a user associated with things like ticket sales or administration of shows, these types of things. When authorization is required, it will open up a login screen on the Auth0 website, and the person can register their email address with a password, or they can log in with a Google account. And once that's done, then it will return an authorization token back to the website for use. This secures the credential information in a third-party repository so that there's nothing to collect out of our database and to be able to use as far as a credential attack.
All right, thank you, Gary. And last, I will have Akasha talk about some of the improvements that we made to the API.
Hello. When we first came in, the API was a little bit disorganized. There were some inconsistent route names and some redundant routes that were doing the same thing. Additionally, the client would get data from the API and then have to perform a lot of somewhat confusing logic on that data to get the information it actually needed. To improve this, we updated the API to be more consistent and organized, and we updated and added new endpoints to better fit the needs of the client and reduce the amount of work needed to be done in the user's browser. One such example was there was a data grid that would get all the events and all of the showings in two separate API calls, and then do some confusing calculations across these two lists in order to figure out all the number of showings for each event. However, we determined that a lot of this information was pretty easily accessible directly from the database, and we modified the API to return that information directly and reduce the amount of work needed to be done in the client. That's just one such example, but there was quite a few like it that we made those changes across the project.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next, I'm going to be talking about the processes that we followed, the work that we did with a timeline, and how we separated some of the work out. So first, we're going to be talking about what we did. The steps that we took along the way were we spent our first term planning the changes that we were going to make. We met weekly to discuss progress and identify any potential trouble spots that we might have to focus on and prioritize. And then we started the second term by taking a deep dive into the code and spotting any potential bugs that needed to be prioritized. And we ended up spending the next 3 weeks patching those bugs. After that, we spent approximately 5 weeks redesigning the front end and back end, and the remainder of the time implementing additional features. We separated the work in terms of roles, so everybody kind of had a different role. Akasha was doing DevOps work, which meant he worked on the front end, back end, and then also some server-related stuff. Al worked primarily on the front end. Gary worked on the database. Mike was full stack, so he went between the front end and the back end whenever he was needed. Long worked primarily on the front end, and I also hopped between all different projects as was needed. We used GitHub projects to delegate tasks and keep track of any bugs that were found along the way. We also kept note of a broad list of requirements in GitHub projects, so once we finished our portion, we could easily pass that off to the incoming teams. We did run into a couple of unexpected events, and Akasha will join us to talk about one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, so when we first started working on the project, we ran into a minor hiccup, and we had to spend some time fixing that first. So when we first started out, we discovered that there was a SQL injection vulnerability that was pretty significant. User input was just being inserted directly into SQL queries and then being ran without any sanitization being done. We were actually able to delete tables from the database by entering in SQL code as input in some of the input fields in the client. So we decided we needed to patch that before working on anything else, and we went and we updated all existing SQL queries to abide by Node Postgres's guidelines for handling user input in queries. And we also made sure to follow that for all new queries as well.
We received a lot of positive feedback for this project from Brian at Portland Playhouse. However, due to the timing constraints with Portland Playhouse and their busy summer projects, we have not been able to present our final changes to them yet, but we're hoping to be able to do that. Some of the lessons that we've learned were what it's like to hop into an existing project. A lot of the people on this team hadn't had a lot of experience with that in the past, so this was a pretty good learning experience. We also learned that documentation is very important, not just for our team, but any teams that are coming into it in the future. And we learned that investing time to write things properly is more important than pushing out features half-heartedly, especially in a project that is going to be ongoing with multiple teams working on it. If we had more time, we would have liked to restructure the entire database. There were a lot of redundancies and tables that we were not able to consolidate in our given time, and we would have liked to be able to rewrite the entire database structure from the ground up to avoid problems in the future. Additionally, we would have liked to finish linking Auth0 data to the front end. A lot of the data that is stored in the databases could be stored in metadata in Auth0 and accessed through more granular scope control. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to prioritize this, but if we had more time, that would have been something we would have liked to do. We'd like to give a special thanks to Portland Playhouse for sponsoring this project, to Bruce Irvin for helping us through this project, and for Portland State University for making this whole thing possible. Thank you all for watching.